I gave my daughter $225,000, and her Harvard graduation photo on Instagram turned out to be fake. My coffee mug shattered on the floor when I saw it. Jessica's Harvard graduation photo on Instagram. I'd sent her $225,000 over 3 years for this moment. But that wasn't Harvard behind her. My legs buckled and I collapsed into a kitchen chair, coffee spreading everywhere. I'm Diana Foster, and I just discovered my daughter had been living a lie so expensive it destroyed me. Jessica had always been my golden child. Valedictorian at Lincoln High, perfect SAT scores, accepted to State University on a full scholarship where she graduated summa cum laude with a 4.0 GPA in business. When she called me 3 years ago sobbing with joy, I thought her brilliance had finally opened the door she'd been working toward her entire life. "Mom, you won't believe it," she cried into the phone. "Harvard Business School. I got into Harvard." I dropped the grocery bags I was carrying and screamed so loud my neighbor Mr. Peterson came running over thinking someone was being murdered. Harvard. My baby got into Harvard. I was a high school dropout who'd spent 28 years working as a bookkeeper for Morrison & Associates, supporting us after Jessica's father walked out when Jessica was 2. The thought of my daughter walking those hallowed halls where future presidents and CEOs studied made me feel like I'd won the lottery. "Sweetheart, I'm so proud of you," I sobbed right back. "Tell me everything. When do classes start? What do you need?" "Mom, there's just one problem." Jessica's voice got small. "The tuition is $7,340 per year, plus living expenses in Boston, books, everything else. It's going to be close to $250,000 total." The number hit me like a physical blow. I made $45,000 a year as a bookkeeper. I had maybe $8,000 in my savings account. But looking at my daughter's straight A report cards covering my refrigerator like badges of honor, I knew this was her moment. "We'll figure it out," I said without hesitation. "You're going to Harvard, baby, whatever it takes." That night, I sat at my kitchen table with a calculator, a bottle of wine, and every financial document I owned. Second mortgage on my little house. Parent Plus, loans for everything I could qualify for, weekend tax preparation work. Borrow against my car. It would mean working 7 days a week until I was 70, eating frozen dinners and canned soup, never taking another vacation. But my daughter was going to Harvard Business School. The first semester, I scraped together $37,000 through loans, borrowing against everything I owned, and maxing out credit cards. I wired it directly to Jessica's checking account. She sent me photos of her Harvard student ID, thick textbooks with titles like Advanced Corporate Strategy and Global Financial Markets. She called me after her first week, excited. "Mom, the professors here are incredible. Professor Anderson has consulted for major corporations for decades, and my classmate Sarah's family owns multiple international businesses. I'm so grateful to be here." I worked every holiday that first year to keep the money flowing. When Jessica couldn't come home for Christmas because she was deep in case study competitions, I understood. Harvard students operated on a different level. Year 2 brought bigger expenses, a mandatory study abroad program in London, professional wardrobe for recruiting events with Goldman Sachs and McKinsey, a new MacBook Pro because the financial modeling software Harvard used required specific specs. "I know it's a lot, Mom," Jessica said during one of our weekly calls, "but the career placement office says these investments separate Harvard MBAs from everyone else. Starting salaries here average $180,000. This will all pay for itself in 2 years. I picked up extra weekend work doing taxes during busy season. I sold my car and bought a 15-year-old Honda. I borrowed $15,000 from my sister Linda, promising to pay it back with interest. When Linda suggested visiting Jessica in Boston to see the campus, Jessica quickly explained that Harvard had very strict policies about family visits during recruiting season. The third year was supposed to be easier, since MBA programs are typically 2 years, but Jessica explained she'd been selected for an exclusive extended program. "Only 15 students get chosen for the Harvard McKinsey leadership track," she told me, her voice filled with pride. "It's basically a guaranteed partnership track at McKinsey. Professor Roberts said I'd be crazy to pass this up." I took out a home equity loan to fund her third year, so proud my daughter was being groomed for elite success. For 3 years, Jessica's Instagram fed my dreams. Photos of red brick buildings with captions like, "Another late night at Baker Library," pictures of her in business suits, presenting our consulting project to Fortune 500 CEOs, group shots of polished young people, my Harvard family. I screenshot every post and shared them with everyone at the accounting firm. My daughter's Harvard experience became my favorite conversation topic. When my boss, Mr. Morrison, asked how I was managing to afford it, I just smiled and said, "You invest in your children's future, whatever the cost." Jessica told me stories about study groups with future senators, guest lectures from Nobel Prize winners, case study competitions judged by Supreme Court justices. Her classmates had last names I recognized from newspaper headlines. Senators' children, tech billionaires' kids, European royalty. Today, the former CEO of Apple came to speak about innovation, she'd tell me over FaceTime, and I'd repeat the story to anyone who'd listen. But staring at her graduation photo, something was terribly wrong. The building behind Jessica wasn't Harvard Business School. I'd seen enough real Harvard photos to know the difference. This looked like a community college campus. With shaking hands, I opened my laptop and Googled Harvard Business School graduation 2024. The official ceremony had happened 3 weeks ago. The photos showed completely different architecture, different regalia, everything different. I called Jessica immediately. "Mom, did you see my post? Isn't this the best day ever?" "Jessica," my voice came out deadly calm. "Where exactly was this photo taken?" "What do you mean? At graduation, obviously." "The building behind you isn't Harvard Business School." A pause, a terrible telling pause. "There was construction on the main building. They moved the ceremony to the satellite campus." I was already pulling up Harvard's official graduation photos on my laptop. "Jessica, I'm looking at Harvard's actual graduation ceremony right now. It happened 3 weeks ago. None of this matches what I'm seeing in your picture." The silence stretched forever. "Jessica, are you there? Mom?" Her voice cracked. "I need to tell you something." "What could you possibly need to tell me?" "I'm not a Harvard student." The words tumbled out. "I never was. I applied, but got rejected. But you were so proud when I told you I got in, and then you started sending money, and I didn't know how to stop it without breaking your heart. I hung up and sprinted to the bathroom where I threw up my breakfast. My phone rang 16 times while I sat on the bathroom floor, my entire world collapsing. When I finally answered, Jessica was sobbing. "Mom, please let me explain. I used the money to live in Boston. I have an apartment in Cambridge, and I've been working part-time at a marketing company. I've been taking some business classes at Metro Community College. I wasn't just partying with your money. Community college." The words felt like glass in my throat. I borrowed against everything I owned to pay for community college. I know how it sounds, but I really was trying to better myself. I was hoping maybe I could transfer to Harvard eventually and make it all true. "Jessica, do you understand what you've done? I have no savings left, no emergency fund, no equity in my house. I'm drowning in debt because I believed you were at Harvard." That's when she told me about the graduation photo. I rented the cap and gown from a costume shop. I hired a professional photographer. I paid some actual Harvard students I met at a coffee shop to pose with me. I thought if I could just get through a fake graduation, I'd have time to figure out how to tell you the truth. I started laughing, the kind of laughter that sounds like screaming. My daughter had hired Harvard students to pose in fake graduation photos because she wasn't smart enough to actually be one. Over the next week, the full scope of Jessica's deception unfolded. She'd been working part-time at a digital marketing startup in Boston, making $18 an hour while living in a luxury apartment I was unknowingly funding. She'd used my tuition money to eat at expensive restaurants, buy designer clothes for her fake Harvard lifestyle, and travel to Europe twice under the guise of academic conferences. The fake graduation photos had cost $800, $500 for the professional photographer, and $300 to pay 3 actual Harvard MBAs to pose as her classmates. She'd ordered official-looking graduation announcements online and had been planning an elaborate graduation dinner where she intended to celebrate her fictional achievement. When I demanded to see her community college transcripts, I discovered she'd been failing most of her classes. The daughter who'd never received anything below an A was getting C's, D's, and F's in basic business courses. "I couldn't focus," she explained weakly. "I was too stressed about lying to you. The financial damage was catastrophic. I'd borrowed against everything I owned to fund an education that never existed. At 45 years old, I found myself with $180,000 in debt, 0 savings, and a daughter who couldn't even qualify for minimum wage jobs to begin repaying what she owed. But the emotional devastation cut deeper than the financial ruin. I'd spent 3 years being the proudest mother in the world. I'd bragged to everyone about my Harvard daughter. I'd felt like all my sacrifices as a single mother had been vindicated because I'd raised a child destined for greatness. Now I had to face the truth that I'd raised someone capable of watching me destroy my financial future while she lived comfortably on my delusions. My sister Linda was furious when she learned the truth. How could you send that much money without ever visiting her? How could you not verify she was actually enrolled? I didn't have good answers because there weren't any. I'd trusted my daughter completely, and she'd exploited that trust to fund a lifestyle she couldn't afford. Jessica's attempts at apologies felt hollow because they were packed with justifications. Yes, she was sorry, but she'd been under so much pressure to succeed. Yes, she felt terrible, but she'd never intended for the lie to go on so long. Yes, she wanted to make it right, but she didn't have the means to repay what she'd stolen. "I really was trying to become the person you wanted me to be," she said during one of our final conversations. "I just went about it the wrong way. I wanted you to be honest," I told her. "I wanted you to be someone I could trust and respect. I never needed you to be a Harvard graduate." A lawyer explained that what Jessica had done lived in a legal gray area. She hadn't forged official documents or impersonated university officials. She'd simply lied to her mother about her academic status and used the money her mother voluntarily sent for living expenses and education. Just not the education I thought I was funding. Family fraud cases are notoriously difficult to prosecute unless there's clear evidence of identity theft or document forgery, he explained. Your daughter exploited your trust, but that's not typically a criminal offense. So I couldn't recover my money through legal channels, and Jessica couldn't afford to repay me through normal means. I gave Jessica an ultimatum. She had 18 months to demonstrate genuine commitment to turning her life around. Finish community college with a real degree. Find stable, full-time employment. Begin making monthly payments toward her debt, even if they were small. Show me through actions, not words, that she understood the magnitude of what she'd done. I'm not asking you to repay $180,000 in 18 months, I explained. I'm asking you to prove that you're capable of change, that you deserve a relationship with your mother. Jessica promised she would turn her life around and prove she deserved my forgiveness. That was 2 years ago. Since then, Jessica has made exactly 4 payments totaling $600. She dropped out of community college after 1 semester, quit her marketing job, and moved in with a boyfriend whose financial situation apparently doesn't allow for debt repayment. She sends me a text on my birthday and Mother's Day, generic messages full of heart emojis, and promises to get back on track real soon. Meanwhile, I've been rebuilding my life from absolutely nothing. I moved to a studio apartment, expanded my tax preparation business to work year-round, and started saving money again, even though I'll be working until I'm 75 now instead of retiring at 65. The hardest part of recovery wasn't the financial devastation. It was learning to trust my own judgment again. For months after discovering Jessica's lies, I questioned every decision I'd ever made. If I could be fooled by my own daughter for 3 years, what other obvious truths had I been blind to? But gradually, I came to understand that Jessica's deception wasn't evidence of my stupidity. It was evidence of her selfishness. A normal parent wouldn't be suspicious of their straight-A daughter's claims about academic achievement. Jessica's lies worked because they exploited the natural love and trust between a mother and child. I've also learned to separate my worth from her accomplishments. For 3 years, I'd felt successful as a mother because my daughter was supposedly attending Harvard. When that turned out to be fiction, I initially felt like a complete failure. But the truth is that my value as a person was never dependent on Jessica's academic credentials. I'd raised her with unlimited love, support, and every opportunity I could provide. Her choice to become a pathological liar reflects her character, not my parenting. The most painful lesson has been accepting that sometimes love isn't enough. I loved Jessica unconditionally, sacrificed everything for her future, and believed in her potential completely. But love can't change someone who doesn't want to change, and trust can't be rebuilt by someone who won't acknowledge the full extent of what they've broken. Today, I'm 47 years old, starting over financially, but stronger emotionally than I was when I thought my daughter was a Harvard MBA. I've learned that real success has nothing to do with prestigious degrees or impressive job titles. It's about integrity, honesty, and treating people who love you with basic human respect. Jessica lives somewhere in Boston now. I'm not sure exactly where since she hasn't given me her current address. She's building a life that doesn't include accountability for her past actions, and I'm building a life that doesn't include tolerance for people who mistake unconditional love for unlimited stupidity. Sometimes I wonder what would have happened if Jessica had just been honest from the beginning. If she'd called me crying and said, "Mom, I didn't get into Harvard, but I got into Boston University," or "I want to take a gap year to work and figure things out." I would have been disappointed for exactly 5 minutes, and then I would have supported whatever path she chose. I would have been proud of her honesty and helped her succeed in whatever way I could afford. Instead, she chose elaborate deception, and in doing so, she lost not just my financial support, but my respect, my trust, and ultimately, my presence in her life. The fake graduation photo still haunts me. When I accidentally see it in my phone's memory, I remember the pride I felt, the dreams I harbored, the future I thought we were building together. But I also remember my coffee mug shattering on the kitchen floor. The moment when everything I thought I knew about my daughter revealed itself as an elaborate, expensive performance. People sometimes ask if I regret working so hard to support Jessica's education. The answer is absolutely not. I regret that she wasn't worthy of that investment, but I'll never regret being the kind of mother who would sacrifice everything for her child's future. The tragedy isn't that I loved her enough to give everything I had. The tragedy is that she didn't love me enough to tell me the truth. But that's her loss, not mine. Because I know exactly who I am, a mother who loved deeply, worked tirelessly, and deserved so much better than what I got. And that's a truth no fake graduation photo can ever change.